Hey folks, Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner for the Onondaga County Board of Elections, and welcome back to Commissioner in the Car. Sorry for my 3-week absence. I'm very sorry about that. My last Commissioner in the Car was 3 weeks ago, and I just ran into a lot of issues. First, I usually do these on Sundays. One Sunday, I was sick, and then I said, there's not much to talk about. I'll do it the next Sunday. And then the next Sunday, I actually, ironically, had car trouble. So here I am, Tuesday. And the reason I waited till today is because we're at the end of the petition filing season, the designating petition filing season here in New York State, which affects, it's the main thing that affects who's on the ballot. And I wanted to wait until the end of that so we could talk about that. That's why this is called the Petitions and Primaries edition of Commissioner in the Car. But first, it's Tuesday, April 7th. It's 77 days away from the June primary, 210 days until the midterm election. Things are counting down. We're almost under 200 days to the big 2026 midterm election. So for over the last 3 weeks at the Board of Elections, we've been very busy. AVR, I've been giving you an update every week about automatic voter registration. When last we checked in, we had started getting daily files from the Department of Motor Vehicles, but now we are getting our what's called change of addresses on a fairly reasonably regular basis like we were before. So things are really going big. In fact, last week we usually get about 400 or 500 a week, but we got caught up with about 3,000 COAs, which is a 6-week backlog that it's not our fault, but it was capped by the DMV and New York State Board of Elections as they were checking all the data to make sure it was correct. And so it came to us, and we put in a lot of time and overtime last week to make sure it got done, and we're caught up again. We are back to daily processing of voter registrations. So we also had our big petition filing turn-in. That was March 30th to April 6th. Normally, it's 4 days. But because Passover was on Thursday the 2nd, which was the last day to file petitions, the New York State Legislature, as they've often done when Passover falls on that, they extend the filing day till April 6th, but they do not extend the passing day. So April 2nd is the last day to pass, but the first day, but the last day to file is on Monday, yesterday. So that extended our filing period. It actually kind of made it very weird because more people filed on the last day than usually, because usually there's an incentive to file early. You give your opponents less time to object. And we'll go into that more in next week's episodes about objections. But because it fell on a Monday, the last day, it actually didn't matter whether you filed on the first Monday or first Tuesday or second Monday. You gave your opponent less time to object. And so a lot of people who waited till that last Monday, they kept walking till April 2nd and then spent the weekend putting the petition together. So, and we also started, because we can't just do one thing here at the Board of Elections, we also started election inspector classes. We have to train about 1,200 election inspectors every year. And we start our classes now, and they will run almost continuously, except for like about a 6-week break while we're running the primary election, until a couple weeks before election day. So that's going to be very busy for us. So we've had petitions, we've had AVR, registration backlogs getting caught up, and election inspector classes starting. So very happy about that. But let's talk about what this week's episode was. It's petition week. And if you remember, designating petitions, I talked about this on the first week of designating petitions on my podcast. Designating petitions are some of the first things that we get to build our ballot here in New York. It is the main thing that builds our ballot in New York. this year, the first thing was the state conventions that happened. Now it's designating petitions. Designating petitions are major party offices, Democrat, Republican, conservative, and working families. The permanent parties pass petitions in most of the public offices to be able to put them on the ballot. I like to say that the way we build our ballot in New York is kind of a weave. We're weaving all these different things together and building this tapestry, which is the general election ballot. And this part of the weave is the designating petition. So these are people who want to run on major party lines, and and this is how we create primaries in New York, by the way. Designating petitions, if your office, now some town offices, and mostly Democratic in Onondaga County, some of the smaller town offices like town supervisors, town board, town clerk, that kind of thing, some of them fill their offices by later on in this calendar called caucuses. We'll go over that when the final caucuses are done. But those towns that do that are not a part of this. But most towns on the Republican side, and a lot of towns on the Democratic side, build their ballot by petition, and also your county ledge, your state offices, assembly districts, and state senate, and of course Congress. Now, if a political subdivision runs over the county line, that means they're in Onondaga County, but they go over into a different county, then they don't file those petitions here at the Onondaga County Board of Elections. They file them at the New York State Board of Elections, even if they walk them here, because part of their district moves to another county. The New York State Board of Elections handles that. And in our area, that's Congress, both state senate seats, 48 and 50, Assembly District 126 in the southern tier, Assembly District 127 in the eastern portion of our district. They all file over in New York State Board of Elections. And then the rest of them, AD 129th, AD 128th, the city of Syracuse, and for all offices in the city of Syracuse, Democrat or Republican, all offices in Manlius, all offices in Salina, all offices in Marcellus, and then of course Republicans in most of the offices, they do their town offices here, plus all county ledges are done by petition. So by the numbers this week, over the petition filing week, we, and I like to call it Shark Week. Sometimes I call it April Fool's Week, because April Fool's usually is around the last day to file. But because it went to April 6th this week, I guess you can't call it that this week. But this is how we really find out who's running for office, because the people who file petitions and how many petitions they file kind of gives you an idea of whether they're a serious candidate or not. So we had 155 separate petitions filed in the 8 days. It was actually only 6 business days of filing at the Onondaga County Board of Elections that had 160 different candidates on there. Now, some of those petitions filed had 2 candidates on there. Some of them had 1. Some of those petitions filed were not for public offices. I'm talking about 160 public office candidates. Some of those petitions filed were for like party petitions and county committees and all of that stuff. So that's why it's they're different numbers there. So that's a lot of stuff that we have to do. And the Board of Elections has to go through and count every signature. We have to make sure that it's technically correct, but we don't go through and verify every signature. That leads to objections that will be coming up later next week, and I'll explain all of that, most of that next week. But yeah, so that was what we've done and how busy we were. And then we added another 10 candidates for the ones that are at the state board. So we're 170 candidates right now that are scheduled to go to the election. So what happens when more than one candidate, 2 different candidates, for a single office files for Democratic petitions, well, that creates a primary, or Republican petitions, or working families, or so on and so forth. And we do have primaries in New York and in Onondaga County. Start with New York. Statewide, there are 4 candidates that filed for the Democratic line for the office of New York Comptroller. Currently held by Tom DiNapoli, who's running for re-election. He has 3 Democratic challengers: Drew Warshaw, Raj Goye, and Adam Buckadecco. All of them are running for New York Comptroller. And why is that important? Well, that means in Onondaga County, every Democrat who's in Onondaga County will have a primary choice at the June 23rd election. I'll go into what that means for me at the Board of Elections in a little bit. But let's go over the other primaries. Onondaga County legislative seat number 8. That is the western portion of the city, and also into a portion of Geddes. Currently held by Chad Ryan. He is running for re-election, but he is being challenged by Tammy Honeywell, another Democrat. And Tammy challenged Chad 2 years ago and lost by, I think it was like 8-9 points, something like that. But she's challenging him again. So that primary is happening. County Ledge 15. This has been held by Maurice Brown for the last 4 years, but he is leaving to create another primary. We'll go over that in a second. And Bill Kinney is the Democratic nominee of the County Democratic Committee, but he has a challenger named Joe Bennett. This is actually a rematch of several years ago when the district was much different. The district used to stretch out into Geddes, but now it starts from the university area of the city, goes around the southern portion of the city, and right on up into Strathmore a little bit, just a little bit into Strathmore. So the district is much different than when they had their rematch, or their first election 4 or 6 years ago, something like that. So there's a rematch there. Then on the County Ledge 16, which is the inner city district, makeup of the center of the city, that has been held by Charles Garland. He has decided not to run for re-election, and 3 candidates have filed for primary there. Charlene Tarver, who's the pick of the County Democratic Committee, Nyatwa Bullock, who's former member of the Syracuse School Board. She lost in the primary last year, and Babette Morgan Baker. So those are the 3 people that will be vying for County Ledge 16. And then, of course, one of the primaries that have gotten the most press, Assembly District 129, Bill Magnarelli, who currently holds it, is being challenged by County Legislator Maurice Brown. And that will probably be the biggest primary. Oh, and then there's one other primary. And it's even a bigger primary, actually, in terms of number of candidates. Syracuse Common Council at large. This was the seat that was created because the Common Council president, Rita Paniagua, she used to be a Common Councilor and won Common Council president last year. And so this is a to-fill vacancy election. Shayla Surratt was the pick of the County Democratic Committee. Helen Hudson is the pick of the Syracuse Common Council, who had to fill the vacancy. And also she's the former Common Council president, who served the last 8 years and now wants to continue to serve, but as Common Councilor at large. And then 2 other newcomers, Dan Stazone and Moise Lobb, who are also filed petitions. Now, just because they filed petitions doesn't mean that they're assured to be candidates. We are in what's called the objection period. And this will run until April 20th. And I'll go over this more in next week's episode because it's pretty complicated. But filing petitions, the Board of Elections assumes that everything is valid and good. But if you file petitions and they are not valid and good, your opponents can object to them, and then we have to rule on those objections. That will happen over the next 2 weeks. And on April 20th is actually the last day for a court objection to be filed. So after, we may not be done with all of our individual rulings if there's a lot of objections, but if there's not a lot of objections, then we should be done by April 20th. I hope we will be. So next week's episode, I'll talk more about objections, because then we'll really kind of know at that point on Sunday, we'll know pretty much who has filed objections or not. So I do want to talk about what a statewide Democratic primary will do for the Board of Elections. And then I'm going to end this episode. So because we see this comptroller primary, and every Democrat in Onondaga County will be eligible to vote in the primary, whether they choose to or not is a whole nother choice, or a whole nother thing, and probably won't, right? There'll probably be about 10-15% turnout for the primary. Because of that, we actually have to open up every polling place in Onondaga County for the June 23rd primary. And we will probably have to open up a significant amount of our early voting spots. It's not so much about the number of voters, although Democrats are the most populous and the largest plurality in Onondaga County. It's also about geographic location, right? Because you have a big county like ours, and you have to have locations where people can go to. So usually in the past, we would open up a north location with the Clay Town Hall, an east location with DeWitt Town Hall, a west location with Camillus Fire Station, a south location with Lafayette Center, and 2 inside the city, 1 north in the Armand Magdarelli Center, and 1 south, either Beecham or Southwest Community Center. So that's more than likely what we're going to do. We're thinking about it. We're weighing our options. We have until May 1st to make this decision. It's quite possible that that there are objections filed against all 3 of the Democratic challengers against Tom DiNapoli. I think that's highly unlikely. I'm sure objections will be filed. I just don't think it'll be thrown off. There's a lot of petitions to go through to throw somebody off, but could happen, and that's why we have to wait till May 1st. So around that time, I'm sure I'll be doing a Commissioner Carr about that. So that's it for petitions and primaries here in Onondaga County and in my Commissioner Carr. Last week, I did 3 weekly walks over the last 3 weeks. I've actually been keeping up on that, even though I kind of been a little absent in the podcast. 5th Supreme Court, Congress in New York Senate 48. I hope that Thursday or Friday I will be dropping New York Senate 50. And then, getting that ready to drop by the end of the week. And then hopefully on Sunday, I will do a Commissioner Carr about how all about objections, everything you would want to know as we build this tapestry and weave all of the different ways on the ballot together to get to our final ballot in our big 2026 midterm elections. So that's it for this week's Commissioner Carr. And thank you so much for joining me. Go to DustinZarni.com. You can follow along, subscribe, get email notifications, or follow me on just about any social media platform except for Truth Social. I'm not going to be on there anytime soon. But you can follow me on those and get all your content and election news updates. Thank you very much, and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.